I remember learning in English class of a literary device known as in medias res. In medias res is Latin for into the middle of things and refers to when a book begins in the middle of the story. This Rosh haShanah feels like in medias res. It comes in the middle of a much larger story. Rosh haShanah marks the beginning of a new year, 5781. We ask Hashem that this new year be a good year. We begin this year spiritually with a clean slate. We eat a new fruit. Some of us wear new clothing to capture this spirit of newness and freshness that these Yamim Noraim embody. And yet all of this newness comes in the middle of a much larger story, in the midst of a pandemic that is nowhere near over. The challenges and limitations of the past 6 months will continue unabated for the near future, and no one really knows for how long. So here we are talking about renewal while we are trudging through the middle of this long marathon of physical distancing. How do we celebrate Rosh haShanah, such a forward-looking holiday, when the present circumstances weigh so heavily on us? How do we move forward when the past 6 months are so present? How do we stop to celebrate in the middle of this long saga? To answer these questions, we first need to clear up a misconception. Hayom haras olam. Today is the birthday of the world, we declare in the davening. At first glance, this seems to suggest that Rosh haShanah commemorates the beginning of creation, the first day of the world. But we know that's not true. The rabbis tell us that Rosh haShanah marks not the first day of creation, but the 6th day of creation, the final day on which Hashem engaged in work, malacha, the day on which he created man and woman. The rabbis strive to understand why humanity was created on the last day of creation and not the first day. Clearly, there is an important lesson for us being last of all created things. The Medrash states that humanity was created last so that if we should become arrogant, we can be reminded that even the tiniest fly was created before us. And the Medrash states also that we should learn how important we are that we were created last, so that everything would be prepared for us to use at our disposal. So in essence, the rabbis teach a dual message, that we were created last in order to teach us both humility and self-esteem, and how to balance them. We must recognize both our weaknesses, limitations, and vulnerabilities on the one hand, and on the other hand, our superior capabilities and our enormous material and spiritual potential. Indeed, the Hasidic master, Rabbi Simcha Bunim of Peshischa, is famous for how he advises that we should keep 2 pieces of paper on us, one in each pocket. On one it should be written, "I am but a speck of dust." And on the other it should say, "The world was created for me." The challenge, of course, is to know when to take out and look at which piece of paper. This past year, nearly all of humanity has been humbled by that part of nature that is even far smaller than the tiniest fly. A virus that we cannot see with the naked eye has inhibited the functioning of nearly the entire world. People across the globe have been affected in profound ways by something infinitely smaller than us. Economies have been shaken. Governments are being put to the test. Entire industries have been changed, all by something so infinitesimally small. We should remember that we were created last. And yet, we have the science and the technology to overcome many of the challenges of this pandemic. We are finding ways to treat people who have the virus and are working towards preventing it. And just as important, we have social and emotional capabilities and character traits that motivate us to support those who are suffering the physical, emotional, and economic challenges generated by this pandemic. We should remember that we are also the pinnacle of creation. Rosh haShanah is a holiday that emphasizes some of the most important lessons to remind ourselves in the middle of this pandemic. And so that's why Rosh haShanah commemorates not the first day of creation, but the sixth day of creation. Rosh haShanah is the anniversary of the creation of humanity, and so it reminds us both of our humility and our greatness. And Rosh haShanah challenges us to deepen both our sense of humility and what makes us great. After the virus initially spread, and we began to confront the confusion and chaos of dealing with an unprecedented pandemic, we were able to flatten the curve, and we were able to find new ways to function as a community. And after those first several months, we developed ways to live and thrive in this new normal. At this stage of the pandemic, Rosh haShanah is uniquely suited like no other holiday to provide us a Yom Tov to reflect on the most important ideas Jewish thought has to offer in the midst of a pandemic. Rosh haShanah affords us the opportunity to pause and reflect on what we have achieved and what skills we must continue to develop. On the one hand, the virtue of humility should remind us that we don't always have all the answers. And some of the challenges posed by this situation cannot be quickly resolved. We need the patience and the perseverance to cope with difficult realities. And we need the strength to support those having difficulty coping with these difficult realities. On the other hand, the virtue of recognizing our inherent greatness should motivate us to meet every challenge that comes our way. Medical, social, emotional challenges can be addressed with further collaboration and advancement. We may be in the middle of this saga, in medias, as they say in Latin, but Rosh haShanah and its core ideas are just what we need to prepare ourselves to meet the challenges and take advantage of the opportunities that lie ahead in 5781. Shanah tovah, aksiva v'chasima tovah.